So thank you for coming and thank you for being here. Tonight, I think we're all filled with some mixed feelings. First of all, the synagogue Nesach in Beverly Hills was attacked on Shabbat, and all of us feel that. Whether we're Ashkenazic or Persian, whether we're Jewish or not Jewish, all of us feel that. So we pray that Rav David and the community of Nesach knows that we are together as one, and we pray for their safety and security as we pray for the safety and security of all who pray and of all who daven Shabbos, of all who pray on the Sabbath. We hope that that community recovers soon and celebrates its Jewish life. As well as you all know, there are great demonstrations going on in Iran, and 1,000 people have been killed by the government simply for demonstrating for affordable food and affordable accommodation. So we pray for those families as well. This evening, we commemorate, we remember, we reflect on a remarkable moment. And here too, I'm sure there are mixed feelings, because I'm sure there are many of you who think back 40 years to the towns and villages and cities and communities where you grew up, the institutions that you were raised in, the schools that taught you, the places where you worshiped, the places where your family went, and you can't but long and remember for those moments, those places. In 1964, the American Jewish community put on a play called Fiddler on the Roof, which was about my family's experience. And we could go to the theater and sing about Anatevka, which is the village all of us came from, and identify with Tevye, who was the grandfather all of us wanted to have. Somebody needs to write a Fiddler on the Roof for the Persian Jewish community so that you can remember the places you came from and point to them to your children and say, it wasn't exactly like that, but it had that character, that flavor, that warmth. I'm sure that tonight you think back 40 years to those places and you feel a pang of sadness and of loss. And yet, at the same time, when Fiddler on the Roof was over and the lights in the theater went up, we realized that we are all Americans. Your children and your children's children will never have to bow before an Ayatollah because they are citizens of the United States of America, because they are free, because they are secure, because they are prosperous, because they enjoy all of the gifts of this blessed place. So tonight is both a commemoration and a celebration. And as an Ashkenazic Jew who's been here just 2 more generations than you, I want to say thank you for coming. Not just tonight, but for coming 40 years ago. Our children grew up together. We have celebrated many, many moments of life. Even though I am an Ashkenazic rabbi, I have been invited to stand under the chuppah with many, many of your children. I have been invited to stand at the bar mitzvah or the bat mitzvah or at the brit milah of many of your children. I have stood up in synagogue to give memorial words to many of your parents and your grandparents, and that has been my honor and my pleasure. We are one community. I am a Litvak. Forgive me for that. You are Persians, but we are Jews, and we worship the same God. We say the same Shema Yisrael in moments of trouble and difficulty. We light the candles on Friday night. We eat terrible foods, gefilte fish. You eat the most wonderful foods, 25 kinds of rice. I begged my son to marry a Persian girl. What can I do? I am grateful that you are here, part of my circle, part of my community, and part of my life. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'gianu lazman hazeh. Blessed us. Amen. We have a wonderful celebration ahead. And to begin our reflection on what this moment means, I'd like to introduce a wonderful journalist and scholar and student of this moment in our history, Please welcome Ms. Tabby Raphael. Sorry? Write it. I'll put it on.
I'll do it. Shalom. Not bad. You can do better. Shalom. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. Hi, I'm Tabby Raphael, and the last time I did this, I was almost booed off the stage by a lot of grandmothers. So, let me explain that. It is very dangerous to follow the Chloe Pormorati ensemble because they're so good. So, what I told my friend Chloe is I'm going to speak before you even start, because the last time you even tried at a shul on the west side, a lot of the audience didn't know that there was going to be someone giving a few minutes of a lecture. And let's just say they got a little bit impatient. I have a Jewish Journal column about it from last year. Since it's the 40th commemoration of the revolution and our community's presence here, would it be okay with you guys if I switch over into Persian for a minute? Okay, great. Salam. کم بلندتر سلام. من تبسم رفایل هستم. همه به من میگن تبی. من نویسنده برای جویش جورنال هستم و قبلا تو سفارت اسرائیل اینجا تو لس آنجلس کار میکردم و من یکی از بنیانگذاران سازمان 30 Years After هستم با دوستم سم یبری که پرزیدنت 30 Years After هستن. Stand up, Sam. 30 Years After ما تو 30 Years After تشویق میکنیم که جوانهای ایرانی یهودی در سیاست جهان بیشتر شرکت کنن. بعد کنیسای ولی بث شالوم از من پرسیدن که برای چند ثانیه چند تا کلمه سخنرانی کنم با اجازه شما. اوکیه؟ اوکی. پس اگه شما اجازه بدین من الان به فارسی یکم سخنرانی میکنم برای جوانها، برای بچه شما. Okay? We're going to switch over into English. How was that, Dad? Was that good? Okay. Let me put this down for 1 second. So, we have to talk about the obvious. We have to talk about what happened at Nesach yesterday, right? And I don't want to get into the facts of it. You more or less know what happened. We don't need to know whether some people think it was a hate crime, whether some people think it was just a very mentally ill person, maybe on drugs. If you ask me, if it was the second, if it was just somebody mentally ill, somebody who was vandalizing the alley and then went into the Bet Knesset, it doesn't matter, because once you start throwing Sefer Torahs on the floor, once you start throwing talit out all over the floor, tearing pages, doing all of this, it does become inherently anti-Semitic, right? So I'm less concerned, and I think we should all be, about the mindset of the man who did this, and more about the fact that obviously the events on the ground and what happened. And I want to tell you, it feels so good for me one day after this happened to all of our community, all of us, Jews around the world. I saw coverage of what happened at Nesach in the Jerusalem Post even. It feels so good to be with a community here tonight, doesn't it? It feels really good to be together for that. And I got a lot of advice from people who knew that I was going to talk to you tonight. I told them there are going to be about 200 people. And I got text messages from some high-level people saying, Tabby, please don't spread more fear about what happened. We don't want anybody else to get really nervous about it. And we can assure you, it really wasn't a hate crime. And then I got messages from leaders in the community who said, no, Tabby, you really actually need to speak about what happened because of the trauma that our community faced, right? I do have to say, there's something about the fact that not only is Nesach a Persian Kenisa, Bet Knesset, but that its founder, Rav Dovid, and his father, Rav Yedidya Shofet, may his neshama have an Aliyah. He married my mother and father in Tehran before the revolution. There's something about the fact that this man, Rav Yedidia Shofet, whose name is on Shofet Hall when my husband and I got married in 2015, the man who was the chief rabbi of Iran, the man who 30 years after in one of our video testimonial projects, formerly called Our Legacy Project, now it's called the Ben Evri Project, his son, Rav Dovid Shofet, gave a testimony video for 30 years after where he said he distinctly remembered the day that Khomeini brought in the religious leaders of the minority groups, and that Khomeini and his cronies had Rav Yedidia Shofet and the leaders of the Iranian Jewish community bow down before him. And I remember Rav Dovid's words where he said, the Shah never would have even asked us or requested us to do such a thing, right? There's something very painful about this happening in a Persian synagogue. I don't know if you remember that last year, vandals broke into a synagogue in Iran, and they actually stole Sefer Torahs. Now, they asked me to keep things positive tonight. So this is what I want to tell you from my point of view. I was born and raised in Tehran, the peace capital of the world. That gets a bigger laugh usually. And I was born after the revolution. My parents had amazing timing. My sister was born in 1979. I was born in 1982, the year that Israel went to, the first Lebanon war. There was carnage everywhere. I'm a child survivor of the Iran-Iraq war. I have some PTSD to this day. Some of you will know from the Bombaran, right? Azun Dorane. If I hear a fire siren or a police siren, I just get really, really uncomfortable, right? If anybody asks me to cover on my hair and does it on purpose, like they did with the hijab in Iran, I get really, really uncomfortable. In fact, I actually get very angry, want to throw punches. And I kept on thinking to myself as I saw these images of Nesach. And my father said to my sister and I, my father, the man who literally put each one of his little girls underneath his arm and escaped out of a house that almost collapsed on us during the Iran-Iraq war, and then gave up his life savings to get us out of the country that the community had been in for 2,700 years. Gave up his factory, gave up his Camaro, gave up absolutely everything while my mother set the table that night, almost as if we were going to have guests the next day. And for the first time ever since I was born in Iran, she left the curtains open for everybody to see. People walking by said, oh, the Davoudis, which is my maiden name, Davoudiyat, they're going to have some big party tomorrow night. Look at this. But we weren't. We were headed for Rome through the grace and help of Hayes, where we stayed for about a year, and then to America. So I'm looking, as you all probably were, at these pictures of Nesach, and I'm asking the questions we should ask, which is, could this happen again? And I said, Baba, what do you think? And he said, can I be honest? I feel like I'm reliving some of those horrors, right? And it's very normal, it's healthy for us to feel like we're reliving some of that. But this is what I want to tell you tonight. This is the positive things I want to tell you about. After the worker came in at about 7 a.m. or so yesterday morning, the attack happened at about 2 a.m. A few hours after that, the police had cordoned off the area. And you know who arrived at the scene? The mayor of Beverly Hills, John Murish, a Jewish man. The former mayor of Beverly Hills, another city council member, Lily Bossi, a Jewish woman, and a child of Holocaust survivors, right? Another Beverly Hills city council member, Julian Gold, Eric Garcetti, mayor of Los Angeles, a Jew. And if there weren't Jewish leaders who showed up to the scene, there were non-Jewish leaders who were expressing support. So Nesach and Rav David received a letter today from Princess Yasmin. And she wrote a letter, she said, where she basically said, After everything Iran, meaning post-revolutionary Iran has done to your community, my heart breaks for you. And isn't that wonderful that we get that kind of recognition, right? That people know. I have to tell you, people all over the world now know about this. And if you ever start feeling like our future as a community has problems with it, or where are we going to be 40 years from now, right? I want to tell you very simple words, but I want you to remember. We have a lot of problems. Okay, we do. We came to America and nobody stopped to ask, hey, how is everybody doing? Are we okay? Are our youth okay? Are we holding on to Judaism, or are we racing to become American? We have some problems. But I have to tell you something. The Iranian Persian Jewish community is so beautiful. It's so beautiful. Where else would you go every Friday night to have family dinners with 3 or 4 generations and the best damn food? You can smell it outside on the street, right? And I have to tell you, I think about it because I think in the American Jewish community at whole, we have intermarriage at about 70%. We don't have that in the Persian Jewish community. We have our challenges. By the way, I'm a product, I am part of an intermarriage. I have to come clean with you, okay? I'm part of an intermarriage. I'm from Tehran and I married a Dehati from Shiraz. I'm kidding, I love Shirazis. Who's Shirazi in here? God, thank God you're in the back. Okay. Okay, don't ever tell them. شوهرم مهندس شاره هنوز بهش میگم دهاتی. So, to wrap things up, I want to tell you some really positive things. When I was at the consulate, I was the director of academic affairs. Under this hat is a lot of gray hairs. The reason I have gray hairs was because it was my job to represent Israel to college campuses in Southern California and in a 7-state region, okay? Well, yes and no. The biggest protesters that we got outside of the consulate were, who do you think? Who? Jews. Some of the biggest groups of protesters we got were a lot of the Jewish groups that were actually telling you they were pro-Israel and pro-peace, but were really vehemently anti-Israel. So here I am, working with campuses, ripping my hair out, right? Thinking, what are we going to do? Israel has so many problems. Jewish students are unsafe. And then you know who comes in the first line of defense to defend Israel on every campus? With the mind, during student council meetings and debates, with the heart, by telling their family stories. You know who are the pro-Israel leaders on campuses? The Persian Jewish kids. It's not a coincidence, by the way. Even if they were born here in America, they have very American names, not embarrassing names like Tabassum, that all of you think is beautiful, but forget it. I was Tabasco for many years to people. It's fine, it meant I was hot. Spicy, not so much after kids, a little zepertu after that. Whenever your mind starts going back to this incident at Nesach, when your mind starts going back to incidents like even New Jersey last week, your mind starts going back to Pittsburgh, to Poway, to things like this, your mind starts going back to the cities all over Iran that you left. I want you to remember the biggest difference, okay? Which is, think about how yesterday the people who rushed to the scene, whether the mayor or the city council members, they're on our side. They're not conspiring with anybody. They're not led by some religious beliefs that think we are somehow inherently najis. You understand? It's so important to keep this in mind. Otherwise, we'll be depressed, we'll have anxiety, we won't go to the supermarkets. And I don't know about you, but I can't go a day without going to Glatt Mart or Elat Market or anywhere else. I can't, right? Because that butcher knows exactly the kind of meat I want. Maicha serulu on Thursdays in preparation for Chodesh on Fridays. Think about that. Think about how even whatever you feel about the president, even the fact that he's done a lot of things that are pro-Israel, coming out and claiming Jews as also a nationality, right? When I was growing up in Iran, every day we were standing in line with our rusari, with our hijab, and going, Marg bar Israel, Marg bar America. And I thought about it, I thought, why couldn't my mom and dad just go to the mudir or anybody else or the principal and say, you know, could our children not say this? But you can't do something like that in Iran because they're going to think you're some kind of Zionist spy or they're going to arrest you. But I want you to know that in America, if your child has an allergy to hazelnuts, you can bring down the school. You understand? You can get in, we're done. You can get in with those teachers, with those educators. We're not in Iran anymore. But just because we're not in Iran anymore, and listen to me, doesn't mean we have to shed everything Iranian about us. The trick to learning to live a balanced, emotionally healthy, and holy life in America, the jungle of America, is to know when to be Iranian, when to be Jewish, and when to be American. And it's to not let go of any of those three items. Right? Am I introducing someone afterwards? Oh, I'm introducing Chloe. No, you're introducing Chloe. I want to thank you for your time. It warms my heart to be with my people, with all of you today. And you're about to hear my friend Chloe Pourmoradi and her ensemble. Here is a woman who, if she had been in Iran, certainly she wouldn't have been able to do this. You and I would have all been arrested along with her, right? So let's really celebrate that tonight we're free, we have music, and we have a lot of community and emunah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Tabby. She's such an impressive young woman. When we first started talking about this program, and we talked about entertainment, there was no one else I could think of that would have the effect of Chloe Pourmoradi and her ensemble. Her group hails from all over the world, Argentina, Egypt, Iran, and the US. So it's not surprising that their music is very eclectic. It's old and it's new. It's avant-garde and it's traditional. It's classical and it's folk. So there's a wide variety of music here. It's really a pleasure for me to work with someone like Chloe who's passionate about her music and also about her Persian heritage and her Jewish heritage. And when you combine that level of talent with the deep sincerity and musical integrity that she has, you have a young artist who's going to have a very long career. So we're very fortunate tonight to be able to catch Chloe and her ensemble as they're sort of on their way up before the rest of the world finds out about them. So ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure, and it's going to be a real treat to introduce Chloe Pourmoradi and her ensemble.
We begin from the beginning, Bereshit. בראשית ברא אלוהים את השמיים ואת הארץ, והארץ הייתה תוהו ובוהו, תוהו ובוהו. בראשית ברא אלוהים את השמיים ואת הארץ, והארץ הייתה תוהו ובוהו, 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 תוהו ובוהו. בראשית ברא אלוהים את השמיים ואת הארץ, והארץ הייתה תוהו ובוהו, תוהו ובוהו. בראשית ברא אלוהים את השמיים ואת הארץ, והארץ הייתה תוהו ובוהו, 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 תוהו ובוהו. רוח אלוהים, רוח אלוהים, רוח אלוהים, רוח אלוהים, רוח אלוהים מרחפת על פני מים. רוח אלוהים, רוח אלוהים, רוח אלוהים מרחפת על פני מים. רוח אלוהים, רוח אלוהים מרחפת על פני מים. רוח אלוהים, רוח אלוהים, רוח אלוהים, רוח אלוהים מרחפת על פני מים. בראשית ברא אלוהים את השמיים ואת הארץ, והארץ הייתה תוהו ובוהו, תוהו ובוהו. בראשית ברא אלוהים את השמיים ואת הארץ, והארץ הייתה תוהו ובוהו, 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 תוהו ובוהו. Thank you all. So that was about the creation of the heavens and the earth. בראשית ברא אלוהים את השמיים ואת הארץ. Creations in the earth. והארץ הייתה תוהו ובוהו, תוהו ובוהו. What does that mean? The earth was vast and desolate and empty, and it was chaotic. And so hopefully you heard a little bit of that in the music. And so in the beginning, in the creation, and in creation in general, there is this idea of separation and distinction. In the creation, there is separation of the heaven and earth, light and darkness, the weekdays from Shabbat. In the birth of a child, for instance, in the creation of an infant, the separation of the infant from the mother. So in creation, it's an element of separation. And so we spoke about the creation of heaven and earth, and now I want to talk about a different creation. A very special creation, the creation of joy. Joy. And so in our tradition, they say that joy is meant to exist without reason. That if you always have like 5 to 10 reasons, something like this, as to why you feel joy, this is not real joy. Joy is meant to exist without any reason. And that doesn't mean that you can't feel sadness or all of these other human emotions. You do. But even in the darkest place, even in the darkest times, you are still joy. Because joy is not a feeling that it comes and it goes. It is a being, right? It's a beingness. It's a way of being. So, in the next piece of music that we're going to play, which begins with the daf. This is daf right here. This music I wrote as a gift for the daf, because for me, daf announces joy, and daf announces celebration. Really, it does. And I took some poetry from Rumi, Maulana, and it says, "Emruz khosh ast an ke ou jan darad," meaning today, he who has life, he who is alive, is joyful, is happy. In their very being, alive, just the beingness of you being alive, having breath within you, being alive, you are joy, you are happy. So the two traditions, they say the same thing. This is the purpose. So now we will play for you, Bulbul Mast.
پای میره خوبان دارد دل مصداق هجران دارد مسکن شب و روز در گلستان دارد آن که جان دارد آن که جان دارد آن که جان دارد آن که جان دارد جان دارد آن که جان دارد Try sing with me آن که جان دارد He who has life آن که جان دارد توی جمله آریان توان پوشیده توی جمله آریان توان
Thank you, Daf. Dafs, multiple Daf. One day we'll have it with 10 Daf. 10 Daf players. This is the dream. Deca Daf. We have so many Daft jokes. Daft Punk. What else? Definitely. Most Daft. So now, I'm moving according to the program, by the way, right? There's an order there. Everything that we're playing before the intermission is from our album that we just released, which is called Begin Majesty. Thank you so much. In Farsi, that is Tolu'e Azamat, the beginning of entering majesty, like entering something beautiful, majesty, majestic. So now we talk about the soul, right? Talk about the neshama. Can everybody just repeat after me? Neshama. It should feel really good to even say the word. Neshama. So the neshama, the soul, it speaks, right? The neshama, it speaks. And in joy, in where we just were, in joy, in that moment of joy, the soul, it speaks very loudly. Have you noticed? Have you noticed that in joy, in moments of happiness, of elation, your soul speaks very loudly. It's very easy to hear it. It communicates, it's very clear. But in sadness and other sort of darker times, more difficult to hear our soul. Don't you agree? More difficult to hear the voice of the soul. You have to work a little harder. Something that we often forget. So I was talking right now about the individual soul, but something we often forget is about the collective soul, the one soul, the whole soul, the soul that connects every single person sitting here in this room, that connects all of us, threads all of us to each of you, that soul. That soul sometimes we forget about. You know, there's this beautiful poem by everyone who is Persian here knows him, Sa'di, medieval Persian poet. And he talks about this one soul in this poem, Bani Adam, which is in a tapestry in the United Nations. And it says, Bani Adam azay yek digaran, که در آفرینش ز یک گوهرن چو عضوی به درد آفرد روزگار دگر عضوها را نماند قرار. And he's talking about this one soul. He's talking about the one soul. Right? He says human beings were created as a whole in one essence and one soul. And if one limb, one part of that soul should break, then all will experience pain and discomfort. And that is what he's saying. And so now we're going to play for you music I took text from Elohai Neshama Shenatata Bi Tehorahi, which is a prayer that expresses gratitude for the purity of the soul. And we typically say this one to express gratitude for the purity of our individual soul. But what if for a moment we express gratitude for the purity, the beauty, the majesty of the collective soul, the whole soul? Yes. So we begin with an introduction melody that combines some Turkish, and then we move into the actual Elohai Neshama.
zidan eyleme. Hay hay hak ismin okur dilimiz. Ey canım, ey canım, hak ismi okur جانیم ای نفس جانم ای صدای یارم نوای آوازم نشانه With this air I'm breathing, with this voice I'm singing, every note in my song written just for you. Eloi Neshama. One day when the time comes, free my soul, body, and mind. I must share something with you all. Thank you so much. Thank you. You know, I would really love to clap for you as well. I would really love to clap for you as well. But I was looking at a lot of you in the audience and I saw. And so I was telling the ensemble actually before we got on stage that, so like the world is round, okay? Like the world is round, our souls are also round. Soul is round. Then we go through life and the soul develops corners. It develops 4 sharp corners, okay? But when you sing, those corners are polished. You polish the corners of the soul becomes round again. This is not my own creation. Rabbi Nachman said this, okay? So whenever I give you an opportunity to sing, take it as an opportunity to polish your soul, okay? So I can clap for you, okay? Thank you so much. So now, we just went through the creation of the heavens and the earth. We went through the discovery of joy. We went through the discovery of the soul. Now, what does it say on the program? Somebody say really loud. Yes, discovery of? Okay, discovery of love. So, I'm going to sing for you, I'm going to play for you variations on a very beautiful, this is like one of my favorite melodies in Ladino. And I wanted to play this for you today, not just because it's beautiful, but I feel that every time I sing it for people, it blesses them with love. So for anyone here who just needs more love in their life, or just anything related to love, may this melody make you feel that in your heart. Yohani no tuhani na mosto amaremos los dos los hijos que nacen, aman como la luna y el sol, derraman como la luna y el sol. Ay, qué hermosas palabricas que me dices tú a mí, el Dios grande que te oiga, aman tú sola para mí, Berman, tú sola para Yo anino, tu anina, nos tomaremos los dos. Yo anino, tu anina, nos tomaremos los dos. Dum di di da de dum, da di da di dum, da di di da di di da di da di da dum. Dum di da 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 dum, da di da da di dum, da di di da di di da di da di da dum. Nos tomaremos los dos, nos tomaremos los dos, nos tomaremos los dos, nos tomaremos los dos. Thank you all. I have to stand for this one. So this month, it's an amazing month that we're in right now. This, in so many different traditions, actually, this month is incredible. Like in the Jewish tradition, we're in the month of Kislev. And so in this month, it's all about light, right? It's all about light, bringing light into the darkest places. It's all about miracles, It's all about your dreams. These are all beautiful things. And so 1 year ago, this month, we created the miracle of recording our album. That was a miracle. And light. I was also telling the ensemble, before we got on stage, I told them all, I said, you're not musicians. Not in a bad way. I was trying to say, you are above that, you are beyond that. You are light. Your instrument, your voice, your composition, whatever, it's a tool to spread light. You are light. And so I say the same to all of you, whatever you think you are not that. You are light. You're a light bearer. It is your job to be a light. So Ayne is a song about that, about somebody who is in this prison of darkness. And it's very harsh at the beginning. You'll hear that in the music. If you listen to the album, you may press next when you hear this one, and a lot of people do that, actually, because it's dark, it's harsh at the beginning. But then this character breaks free from the darkness, from the prison that they're in, into the light. And I want you to listen for that in the music. You'll hear it. This is called Ayne. My father wrote the poetry, the text, the lyrics for this one, for Ayne. I wrote it many years ago.
تو بستی توی قفس نشستی با چشکای روی نافتون میخونن زیر بارون سرود عشق رسیده بوی بهار دمیده عکسه توی آینه هیچ صورت پنهونمون عکسه توی آینه داشتن در زندونمون
آفتاب میشه فردا آروم 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 میشه گرما امروز بارون میاد بارون 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 برای ما آفتاب میشه فردا آروم 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 میشه گرما Sounded great.
Chloe Purmuradi and the Chloe Purmuradi Ensemble. Wow. I told you. So now, please sit. You'll have another chance to stand at the end of the concert. This is the break time. However, we're going to ask you, please stay in your seats if you can, because we have someone we want to introduce you to. But before we do that, I want to introduce all of these very, very fine musicians. You know, there are a lot of great musicians, but musicians who can play together as one like that's something very special. So if you would introduce all the musicians, great.
And before I do, thank you, Cantor Barron. Honestly, such a kind, like beautiful man, beautiful soul. I felt that the first time I met you. Genuine soul. And thank you to VBS. First time I walked in here, I felt the openness, just the kindness of this community and the environment. So thank you for this beautiful synagogue as well, for having us. I'd love to introduce everybody, Ava Nahas on multiple percussion instruments. Jamie Papish, percussion. Daniel Reichman, guitar. Alexander Maymand, tar. Woo! That was amazing, wow. Zach Lodmer, clarinet, and bass clarinet. Ramin Abrams, upright bass. This is my musical family. Mishpacha.
Thank you. So again, it's a short break mainly for the band. There's no popcorn, there's nothing like that. Okay, so please stay in your seats and we'll let the band take a short break. And I'd like to introduce someone special to you. He is the president and co-founder of 30 Years After, and his name is Sam Yebri. You all know him. And Sam is going to tell us 30 years after, now 40 years after. Where are we on this journey? So please, Sam, thank you. Give a warm welcome.
Thank you, Cantor. Another hand for Chloe and her ensemble. And to VBS, thank you for bringing us together. In many ways, it's really appropriate that we are here at VBS, a community whose leaders have embraced us over the last 4 decades, a synagogue where our own have become leaders, including members of my own family, the Sassouni and the Niku families, who've done so much for this community. We're very fortunate to have VBS in our lives. In America, everyone has an immigrant story. My story, your story, our community's story is not unique in that regard. And when I tell you about my story, it's going to sound similar to yours. It's going to be similar to those of other American Jews and other American diaspora communities from all over the world, right? When I was a year old, my parents, who are here, had to make the fateful decision a few years after the revolution, shortly after my grandfather was arrested and imprisoned in Evin prison, under the guise of a revolution during a war, to leave everything they knew, everything they had, the land of their birth, the land of their ancestors, for an uncertain future. And like many of you, with the help of some smugglers, Jewish organizations like HIAS, like Tabby said, the benevolence of America and its asylum law of 1979, we were able to traverse, for many of us, across the world, like my family, from Pakistan to Rome, eventually to Los Angeles. We were able to build a new life. And like other immigrant communities, thank God our story has a happy ending so far. We've reached the highest heights in business and real estate, law, medicine, and more recently, the arts and academia and philanthropy. But that was the past. What does the future hold? All we need to do is look at our fellow Jews who came here a generation or two, or in Rabbi Feinstein's case, 4 generations ago, what the future could hold if we don't hold on to our traditions and our values and our history. Lord Rabbi Sachs, the former chief rabbi of the UK, said that the greatest threat to the future of Jews in America is not anti-Semitism or assimilation, it's comfort and prosperity. So what do you do? And in terms of anti-Semitism, Tabby addressed that issue beautifully. I was going to touch on it as well. But the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the rabbi of the Chabad movement, said that to defeat anti-Semitism and assimilation, we don't need to build walls. We need to open our hearts with love and be philo-Semitic, share our Judaism not only with each other and other Jews, but with the world. There's a great teaching in our Talmud that when we give of ourselves, we don't diminish ourselves. It's like a fire. We don't diminish the fire by sharing it with others, by sharing our Judaism, and most importantly, our story with others. It's not like water that when you give half of it to someone else, you have less yourself. So I want to talk about something that Tabby always talks about and has shared throughout the 30 years after community, which is how we preserve and pass on what makes our Iranian Jewish heritage so valuable. And that's by telling stories. Each of us has, thank you, has a story like mine. Yours has ups and downs, what it was like to be Jewish in Iran, the good, bad, and the ugly, what it was like to start a new life in America. And for me, I'm often asked, when did you get that passion for Judaism, the community? I didn't go to day school. It was not something that was necessarily destined for. It was when I heard my grandfather's story soon before he passed away. My grandmother's here as well. Fortunate to have her still in our lives, to be the matriarch of our family. But he told us about what it was like to be raised in Iran, to live through the Holocaust with those lenses, be arrested for no reason, maybe just because he was Jewish or a Zionist. And that story, when I was a teenager, when I heard those stories, and we gathered our cousins around, imprinted something in me that I'll never forget. And the takeaway from that, more than anything else, is that Iranian Jews, we didn't just wake up one day to a comfortable life in Encino or Beverly Hills or Westwood or elsewhere. We have a story. We have a history. And that history imparts upon each of us a responsibility. And when you look into those stories, you feel pride and you feel a need to do more. And that's one of the purposes of 30 Years After, which is to preserve those stories, to use those stories to be a light, like Chloe was saying, to the greater community. We do it through politics, we do it through activism, we do it through education. We have what Tabby described, the Ben-Evri Project, where we collect stories, video testimonies of Jewish life in Iran and are fleeing to the United States. We've now collected more than 300 of those videos. We encourage all of you to participate and be a part of our journey as we collect these testimonies before they disappear. And I want to end with that thought, is that if all of us share with our children and our grandchildren, for some of us, and I have 4 children myself, these stories, and these stories get passed on, we'll have that link to our heritage. And to everyone in this room, I encourage you to share not only with your family members, but with your coworkers. These stories can become a valuable tool when you're sharing what it means to be an Iranian American Jew. You can use it in your advocacy for Israel. You can use it with friends who are not of Iranian background, your fellow Jews in synagogue. But telling that story is the way that we honor our past, we build a future that we can all be proud of.